Welcome to the Radical Exchanges podcast. My name is Jess Scully and I'm the Executive Director of Radical Exchange. We're a global network and a foundation that deploys creativity and technology in service of expanding the agency of communities, building more resilient democracies and creating more efficient and innovative and participatory ways of sharing and managing resources. So thank you for joining us. Excited to share this conversation with you. We're inviting you to join us in our work in a spirit of radical experimentation and radical imagination as we prototype a future we can actually look forward to with an incredible network of innovators all over the world. One of those innovators is Max Semenchuk. Max is the program director of the Web3 Institute. Web3 Institute is part sandbox, part incubator and think tank. It's an entity that's focused on fueling the digital economy in Ukraine by developing the Web3 space. And the Web3 Institute works at the intersection of government, academia, and the private sector to support, more exchange and interaction and cooperation across those sectors in service of digital innovation and the Web3 ecosystem in Ukraine. So welcome, Max. Thank you for joining us.
Greetings, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Max, please introduce yourself and the Web3 Institute. What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. Well, I began my career in design and software development, and in 2010 I built my company, mostly doing product development and management. And around 2016, I learned about the DAO, initial DAO experiment. It made me really curious about the whole blockchain space, and that's where our company has also started to develop more. And it was so novel, I started to research it and participate in the global conferences, organize meetups. But in 2020, the COVID struck, right? And all the global travel stopped. And I was really worried about what going to happen, in my country and so on. And I tried to apply the ideas I learned from this distributed DAO movement to the Ukraine situation, mostly to the coordination of online volunteering and helping hospitals and so on. And that's when I understood that in the time of crisis, only the trusted connections work, only the established processes work, because everybody shut down and tried to just to survive. And when we tried to we applied some innovation with some success. But what I really felt is if we want to make this impact more scalable, we need to integrate into the governance, into the government, in the municipalities and so on. So just around that time, also the new ministry was formed and the team that was leading the development of the regulation for crypto and virtual assets. So I joined the team as an advisor, and for my first big project was in developing the strategy. And I couldn't develop strategy just by my own. So we invited different ministries, types of businesses, NGOs, and so on to form a strategy. And one of the key pillars of that strategy was education, that we need to prepare people for government wants customer protection, consumer protection, businesses needs users, so we all needed to spread the knowledge. And that's how the Web3 Institute came to be. We gathered all these volunteers and businesses, and with the support from the MinDig ministry, we formed this entity that is now focusing on developing the field. And our vision in the strategy, we have a metaphor of digital Venice in the terms of both democracy and prosperity. That Venice that was on the peak at some moment, but also was really interesting organization. So more specifically, especially in the time of war, we focus on all the projects and ideas that can support recovery, security. We strive towards interoperability, with European Union in terms of documents and so on, economic, social governance impact. So not to forget about that as well. So that's briefly what we do.
And so just to go back there, you said MINDIT, which is the Ministry of Digital Transformation.
Transformation of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's how we shorten it.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm sure we're going to run into a lot more acronyms, but just to clarify that one, the Ministry of Digital Transformation in Ukraine has actually been attracting a lot of attention, and it's curious, like some might imagine that there are more urgent priorities for a nation which is 4 years into a very all-consuming war, but it's been threatened, invaded for more than 10 years. How and why did supporting Web3 and supporting the development of blockchain and how did that digital innovation become a critical part of the driving force of government in Ukraine today?
Yeah, sure. And I agree that building strong defense is our first priority. Also for the ministry, a lot of projects have moved there. And even what we do with virtual assets, like fundraising for Ukraine in crypto or restricting access to, to exchanges from like terrorist groups and so on. But to give wider context, like when I was born, the population of Ukraine was 52 million. And now it's closer to 37 millions who reside in Ukraine, and it's declining almost like 1% every year. And just with in the last years, like 6 million people were forcefully moved abroad. And I know it like I was born in Lugansk and my parents had to leave back in 2014, so it's a huge problem for sure. But now there is like almost 25 million of Ukrainians are outside of Ukraine, like the broad diaspora. It's almost, it's soon to be as same level as in Ukraine. And also the war times, they put more pressure on the democracy. Of course, there are reasons for that, but lots of things are restricted and harder to do. And how do we engage those who reside abroad and deal overall with economic hardships and aging population? So basically, this is not just to survive the war, but to build a country desirable for the young to stay or for like others to return. And in my view, a sustainable future should include measures on better coordination, integration, new institution, where I believe Web3 is contributing to.
Ukraine has, absolutely, taken digital innovation as a key priority because in 2024, Ukraine was ranked first in the world in UN's e-participation index, up from 57th in the world in 2022. So that framework's looking at these different aspects of how governments use digital technology to inform citizens, to engage them in consultation and deliberation, and also in the co-design and the co-production of policy and services. So that's an extraordinary achievement. What are some of the factors that you think have played into Ukraine being able to accelerate digital innovation, so rapidly in that period?
Yeah, I guess it mostly comes out of the first necessity. It wasn't just about building innovation, for the sake of it. We went through like a series of crises from the revolution of dignity, then the COVID, then like this full-scale war. And that also was a big factor was technical talent we had, as Ukraine had a lot of and has a lot of technical universities and is a powerhouse for development that combined together also with a vision for digitalization. So when Zelensky became a president, he stated that as the key priority of his program and significantly reformed and basically created a new ministry for digital transformation, which is recognized as the most efficient, both by the population in support and donors. I think together, all of that factors and the international experience brought together created a lot of great products. One of the most known of them is Diia, which is like identification application, which holds all the documents and is quite known. And After that, it was also the Prozorro, the public procurement platform. So there was a huge demand for transparency after the revolution, to fight corruption. And later on the basis of the reform of decentralization, with the help of Swiss and UK, USAID, UNDP, a program called e-governance for accountability and participation started, which created a lot of the services like e-petitions and so on, and services inside of the regions. Now, during with the full-scale war, another platform which is getting traction is called Dream, which tracks restoration projects. So every city can publish what do they need to restore. What was the proofs and so on of rebuilding. So it helps donors to coordinate better around that and to recognize priorities. And overall, I think the ministry practiced digital diplomacy, first of all, collaborating with countries like Estonia, taking some of their open source development and now building on top of it and scaling to other countries, all of that best experience.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Some of those products have become, globally recognized, like Diia, for example. Prozorro is getting a lot of attention. And then you look at something like Dream, which is perhaps more nascent, still growing. And you can imagine, of course, it's incredibly relevant in the context of reconstruction, but also potentially really valuable in a lot of other contexts as well, in terms of funding public goods and bringing people together to discuss and prioritize public infrastructure generally, and local development. So this could potentially bear fruit in many different contexts.
True.
I think one of the things that we're really inspired about, seeing the digital resilience of Ukraine, is that it shows us in practice how something we advocate for, which is decentralization and decentralized digital infrastructure for identity and securing identity, enabling participation, deciding on funding for public goods. These things that we think of as priorities are actually really achievable, even in very difficult conditions, and even when you have constrained resources as well. And it shows us how it supports the resilience of the community and the feeling of strength in the community, I can imagine, and connectedness in the community as well. But for people who are Web3 natives, DAO natives, this is common knowledge, right? This is the kind of thinking that is really common to the Web3 world. How have you been able to translate this kind of thinking from the world of blockchain to a government ministry when, as you said at the beginning, initially, during the COVID times, there was all this resistance to new ways of working and new forms of organization?
Yeah, it's definitely still a long way to go. Like, we proceed now with different conferences, education and promotion for wider awareness and recognition. And we have a good number of supporters as well, like in the government or in the public sector, like some zealots of decentralization and even Web3. But for the general government, I think our ideas are still radical. I think we share here some of the similarity. And most people don't think about it as a Web3, only cryptocurrencies, I could say, which usually has not the best reputation among wide audiences. But adoption is growing and the crises are only fueling this. So Ukraine, by different ratings, is usually ranked in around top 5 in adoption per capita. And even if you look, a huge number of parliamentarians and officials declare crypto in their declarations. So it's hard to ignore. But most people still confuse crypto with blockchain, for example, or think Web3 is a marketing buzz, and we're yet to show them the full potential of the community building power and concepts, not just technological but also economical, organizational. And for us, the best way to go is working directly with more people, giving them more practical experience. And we sometimes speak about the minimum viable consortia, so that we always have a representative from business, or industry leader, like the academy and the government, to help scale real knowledge about this.
So much of what you're doing at the Web3 Institute, I suppose, will be on show at the big event that you've got coming up in mid-November, which is the IEEE Ukrainian DLT Forum Rebuildal. So and we're really excited at Radical Exchange that we're going to be presenting our own event, the Future of Digital Democracy, Learning from Ukraine, as part of that event. What can people expect if they attend that event, and what's the bigger context to the Rebuildal event?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I should start with this organization. We call it IEEE, which is like the biggest engineering organization in the world, all around. And there is this sections on blockchain and Ukraine and so on. So this is the second forum we hold. Previous was in the 2023. Unlike typical blockchain business conferences, it has a bigger focus on academy and the governance. So it has a healthy mix of like three of those sectors we intend to connect together. And the topic of this year is some people ask if we write it with a mistake. It's like it's not rebuild, it's like rebuildal. Like we have in crypto these jokes like hodl and so on. So we intend to have it like we don't focus purely just like only blockchain. So we invite you to speak about democracy and so on. So there are many topics we feel adjusted to Web3 or the future of institutions, but with this flavor of Web3 community organizing it. That's where the topic comes from. And the event would consist, like it's all going to be online because it's really hard to travel in Ukraine, and it's dangerous to gather many great minds in one place as well because of the bombings. But there would be 3 days full of speeches, were just keynotes, and then there are 3 meetups, one on the digital democracy, one on the Web3 education, and one on the identity, specifically with the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So there would be some cases of European identity projects with Web3, maybe Bhutan, so we'll see.
It's really exciting. I mean, there's a lot of parallels with the ideas that we're interested in, and broadly at Radical Exchange that you're exploring, but also specifically in this event that we're co-hosting with you, around identity and building trust, dealing with misinformation and disinformation, and how do you manage a very toxic information ecosystem? How do we bring people together to collaborate in a space where there's a lot of diversity, but perhaps not a lot of existing connections and layers between people. So there's a lot that our community can learn from this experience, and that I hope that we can also bring to the event. Your background, you told us a bit about your background earlier on, Max, that you're a designer and you're an entrepreneur. Did you ever expect that you would be a civic technologist? Was that something that was kind of in your future that you anticipated, and that you'd be working, side by side with or in government? Is that a surprise to you? And what have you learned through that process? Would you encourage other developers, other designers, people who make products to actually kind of get involved in the civic tech space?
Well, I learned that I'm gonna be an IT person pretty early, like as a kid, having a computer since, 10 or something. And then I developed my business, and mostly I developed my business sense logic, and some experience with that. But overall, I didn't expect to work with the government. The perception in Ukraine of government back then was not very high, in my family as well. But it was also a bit of a necessity to understand how that works. But I'm very happy that I started to do that. Of course, like my strive to volunteering and technology led me to this public goods funding and Web3 and so on. But also, I really enjoy my work with the ministry because of how my team is. I remember when I first came to the office, this like old building of the cabinet of ministers. It's like looks like a very old Soviet library or something. But then there was this floor of our ministry with like a big carpet and this sitting bags, and also there were like posters of DC superheroes, and I was like, why? Why do you have DC superheroes? And there were two reasons. First of all, there is this project Diia, which is like a like digital jurisdiction, which is also one of the innovations. But also one person told me that there is a feeling that maybe like heroes in DC, our work won't be too visible. Many people won't be on the forefront, somewhere in the shadow, but doing the really important big things. And such cultural learnings really supported my strive, to continue to work with these people. Yeah, and now after some time, I understand that, whatever makes sense overall makes sense in the government. And, it's I'm trying to be this connector now for people who are looking to do something with the government and trying to share this experience with them.
Yeah, I think that's true. You have to bring your own logic and experience from the world of entrepreneurship, from development, from Web3 communities, or whatever community you come from. Because I had a similar sort of experience where I didn't expect to be working, when I was in an elected position or when I worked in government. I'd always worked in the creative industries. I'd always worked with artists and people who told stories. And but then you realize actually we just need to bring diverse thinking into government if we want the structures of our society to function differently, and we have to enable that sort of different thinking to flourish in those spaces and try and change some of those structures, because if we don't adapt those structures, then our democracies won't be able to survive in this really challenging new era that we find ourselves in, right? So we need more technologists, and we need more creative people and more entrepreneurs in government, helping, learning how it works, but also bringing diverse perspectives to it. So, thanks so much, Max. It's been really wonderful working with you and the Web3 Institute over the last couple of months as we've been, gearing up to host this event together. I'm really excited to see how it all develops. And thank you so much for your time here on Radical Exchanges.
With a pleasure, and looking forward to speak more during the events.